Thank you, Chairperson, and everyone who's here today. I appreciate the opportunity to testify. It's actually the first time I've ever done this in my life before. So, I live in Madison. I studied iron ore and received my master's degree from the University of Madison here in 2010. And I studied iron ore. So I traveled to Australia, the largest iron mines in the world, northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, Michigan, and Ontario, multiple times over the last 5 years. This is a small sample of what I have at home of iron ore. I have a very extensive collection, and I've published 3 peer-reviewed papers on iron ore. So, sitting in the audience as a scientist, there's a lot of confusion in what I hear about the word ferrous versus the word sulfide. This is not a scientific manner in how the community and the public have been talking about this, and it's kind of frustrating. So ferrous has been used to mean iron ore, and sulfide has been used to mean sulfide ore. This hides the fact that there are sulfide minerals in the iron ore itself. The committee is not talking about this, and the bill will treat the waste rock from this mine as though it does not contain the sulfide minerals. So I'm going to demonstrate that today. Ferrous is a word that means iron is in its +2 valence. 2 different chemical valences. So within shale, which this is an example of shale, this is the overburden. This contains pyrite. You might have seen Fool's Gold before, right? So pyrite is FeS2, ferrous disulfide. This is the iron ore. Here's a good sample. It's very magnetic. Here's a more typical sample. Only the bottom is magnetic, and the rest of it is junk. Okay, so that's not magnetic. That's 60% waste silica, and this is the waste pyrite on top in the shale. Only one master's thesis from the University of Michigan exists on this from 1976. The person walked 80 miles and said everywhere he walked there was sulfide in the Tyler, which is the overburden. Representative Tiffany testified that the chemicals to process sulfide won't be needed since we're mining ferrous oxide and taking one of the risks out, but this is a lie. He also says that this is a 21st century mining bill and not like the 19th century mining bills. The fact is their mining was safer. It took millions of years to concentrate the iron at the surface, and that iron is a lot like this, where it's mostly iron. That's been removed. That's the frosting. Now we have left is the cake, and the cake is not that good to eat, and the cake's actually better in Minnesota. I'd like to be asked a lot more questions about the science. I probably know the most about these rocks than anybody in this room, and you guys should really go out there and check them out.
Mythbuster. Mr. Chairman, Pamela Richard. Hold on one second. I'm just going to try to get more people here because we're going to waste time, and I'm trying to maximize people. So Joseph Skulan, we're going to take it. I'm going to put all these people back to the bottom, and if they are not up when I call their name, they'll go back. I know, I'm used to making this way, but if the people as I call them off, please sit in these 2 seats up here, so I know there are 3 people on deck. The other people who are there, if they could go over to those chairs, we can keep maximizing the number of people. So we have Joseph Skulan, we have Linda from UW-Madison, Linda Pfeiffer, Joseph Skulan from Lodi, Ken Wood from Madison, Peter Slabby from Milwaukee, Pamela Richard from Milwaukee, Jessica Bolick from the Hurley area, Mike Balber from Bayfield, Laura Armagust from Bayfield. So, thank you very much. So, Joseph Skulan? Skulan, I'm sorry.
I'd like to pick up where Jason left off. Like Jason, I'm a geochemist, a PhD geochemist, and I've studied the oxidation of iron and aqueous systems. I started out as a proponent of this mine, basically because iron oxides are, basic. They're rust, they don't cause any damage. But as I learned more, I discovered the Tyler Formation, the Tyler Shale, which is very rich in pyrite. I have personally analyzed a sample from the core taken about 10 miles east of the easternmost extent of this mine, and it is 20% pyrite. Some of this pyrite, some of this shale has iron concentrations in the form of pyrite that rival the iron concentrations in the ore itself. It's not going to be mined, but if you talk about the sheer volume of shale, and also of shale, not just on the overburden, but also mixed in with the BIF, mixed in with the banded iron. You're talking about possibly hundreds of millions of gallons, billions of gallons of sulfuric acid being produced. And the pyrite also tends to concentrate toxins such as selenium and arsenic. That also will be released. I've been listening to the testimony today, and through this whole process, I've been kind of surprised that a scientific issue And Scott Walker himself described this as a scientific issue, that there's been so little science actually discussed. No one is talking about the rocks. I went out 2 weeks ago and examined the rocks in person. There's nothing published. The mining company has not taken cores. We don't know what is under the ground there. So, but we do know that there's a lot of pyrite, and that is sulfide. This is not an oxide mine. This is a mixed oxide sulfide mine.
Next up is
Sir.
Wood.
Are you taking questions?
I am, but I'm just, if they're, yes, I am. I'm just trying to respect people's time, that if we want to get done by our timeline, the questions that we ask will take away from the people at the end. So I respect it.
I will stay here and we'll see people for as long as it takes. I do have a question, because this is, I think it is an important question about the science that we really haven't talked about. And as a layperson, I'm trying to understand this. I think we're all trying to understand this and do the right thing. But can you just explain the significance of having pilings with pyrite in it that can create sulfuric acid, and what, can you just explain the environmental consequences of that?
Pyrite is ferrous sulfide, FeS2, and it is unstable, thermodynamically unstable on the surface. You mix it with water and oxygen, it oxidizes, and it oxidizes to produce sulfates, particularly sulfuric acid. And for every ton of pyrite, it has the potential of producing about 1 ton of sulfuric acid. So it caused direct damage from the sulfate, which in wetlands is reduced to hydrogen sulfide, which kills wild rice. You also have the direct action of the acidity of the runoff and the toxins that are things like selenium that have chemistry similar to iron, sulfur. And so that when you find sulfur, you tend to find selenium mixed in with it. So those also will be released. And these are, these rocks have been sitting here for 1.8 billion years, weathering very, very slowly. You're talking now about accelerating that process by a factor of millions and releasing over the course of a few years a sulfate load that normally would take many millions of years to be released. So you're going to be swamping the ability of the natural ecosystem to deal with this excess sulfate load. And again, I started out as a proponent of this mine. Really, I did. Jason and I both did. I just don't know how, when you're removing, we're talking about cubic kilometers of rock, and how there's any hope of managing the rock. That it's just beyond, science has not advanced to the point where we can do the impossible.
Thanks for telling the truth.